I'm Sharon Brett Kelly, and for the detail today, we're doing a podcast about the Circular Fashion Design Awards, which sounds really neat, and I'm with Davina Zimmer, my colleague. Actually, we've had a little look, and it's a bit of a who's who of the fashion industry, isn't it?
It does feel a little bit like you're rubbing shoulders with the big dogs here, and I guess what I'm interested in finding out tonight is, yes, we're wanting to be more sustainable, but we can only really be sustainable if the clothing is actually realistic to be wearing on a day-to-day basis.
This is an industry that's in big trouble. This is an industry of creative people, of skilled people, and it's on the brink. So it'll be interesting to talk to some of the key players who are here tonight to find out what these awards and this whole thing of circular fashion, what it means to the industry's survival.
And what it means to the future of fashion designers coming through in terms of hope for them as well.
Exactly. So let's go in.
Let's go.
The first thing you see in the room is a display of weird and wonderful outfits on mannequins, but the stunner is a big pile of clothes dumped on the floor. I talked to Jacinta Fitzgerald, Chief Executive of Mindful Fashion, before the crowds turned up to find out what it's all about. Gosh. How many
huge,
items?
Isn't it? So it's almost up to your shoulder, I would say, maybe even up to your earlobe.
Yeah.
And what we're looking at here is half a tonne of clothing, and this represents the volume of clothes, so only clothing, that we send to landfill in New Zealand every 5 minutes. It's absolutely astronomical. And this is a global problem. You know, these brands, fast fashion brands, have grown so quickly that countries don't know how to manage it. And so there's no checks and balances at our border for these clothes coming in. You know, there's no GST on purchases under a certain amount of money. So there's absolutely no barrier for these items of clothing to come into the country in truckloads. And what that's meant is that it's having an impact on our local industry. And then we're inundated, our charity shops are inundated, they can't do anything with the clothing, and it's such low quality that they can't sell it in charity shops, so then it ends up going to landfill, and the charity shops have to get rid of it in landfill, if not for, companies like Impact Checks who are using old clothing like this and making new products out of it.
We've got a bit of a noise in the background, but that's because we're getting set up for what?
All go. We're getting set up for the Mindful Fashion Circular Design Award event, where we are presenting the award winners tonight, and we're also viewing an exhibition of the finalists in the Circular Design Award.
We're looking at some pretty groovy outfits. That would probably be a good description, wouldn't it?
What you're looking at is some really creative ways to reimagine textile waste as circular. That's what you're looking at. And so what we challenged entrants to do was to really make this a place-based problem-solving exercise, to look around their local neighbourhoods and communities and identify a waste stream, and then reimagine that waste stream into a piece of like a clothing outfit. But we also challenged them to actually design with the circular economy in mind, so not only just make something out of waste, but actually think about the full life cycle of the garment that they made, so it doesn't become waste in the future, because there's no point in remaking something that then just becomes waste.
New Zealand is tiny. The fashion industry in New Zealand is tiny, but we buy a lot from overseas, and you have these massive websites like Temu. I mean, I guess, what is the point of this, really? You know, when you're so overwhelmed with that kind of thing?
That's a really good question. I think I'm really optimistic. I think the point is that we're changing mindsets and we're showing people what's possible. We're showing people that, you could look at old, obsolete sailcloths, and they're not just rubbish. They can actually be reimagined into something new. They may no longer be usable as sailcloths because they might have holes or tears in them, but actually it's still a valuable resource.
What kind of response do you get? It's only year 2, so very early days, but still.
We've definitely grown this year, and we've seen an increase in numbers of entrants, but we've also seen a real increase in the level of the way that people are thinking about the problem and the way that they're trying to solve it, which for us means that we're sort of, we're starting to get through, some of these ideas are starting to really ferment in people's minds. And what we've done this year as well is introduce the Circular Business Innovation Award. So we're really trying to bring this idea from the design rooms and the sort of university studios, design studios, into businesses. And like, we know there's a lot of great stuff happening in businesses. We want to elevate that and showcase that, and also inspire other businesses that they can do it. So, I think what we're trying to do is show the growth of the awards into these other areas over time.
Nice to meet you. I'm Davina. I'm from The Detail.
Yeah, great.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, kia ora. I'm Jeff from Offcut. So we're a company that takes textile waste and scraps and turns it into hats. So helping companies and corporates take waste out of their supply chain.
And so we're standing in front of 3 caps here. You've got the bright orange one, and then a grey one, and then a black one behind it. What can you tell me about these caps?
Yeah, cool. So the orange one first is a collab that we did with Aperol Spritz. So these were formerly an umbrella from a restaurant, and we took those for Aperol Spritz and turned them into hats. And then, the grey hat is working with a furniture upholster down in Timaru. Yeah, this fabric is a wool or a sofa or curtain covering, and they just have sacks and sacks full of textile waste, and gave us a call and said, is that something you could use? But yeah, we've got a couple of big kind of fish that we're trying to fry, and some big companies that we're trying to work with at the moment, with one of the Super Rugby franchises. So they're sort of starting to look at what they do with old rugby jerseys and waste in their supply chain.
Some of these outfits are, well, I don't know how to describe them.
They're quite out. They're not everyday wear.
But I do like this. I think you could wear this to a cocktail party or something, couldn't you?
I would wear this. You've got the ruffled one shoulder, and then you've got these little diamond clasps coming along the centre, showing a little bit of skin. So probably not.
Yeah, not too risque.
No,
I think you could get away with it, Davina.
I would wear this.
It's called I'm So Wasted, and it's been made by Lucilla Little. Now, what I read about this is what I love is she sourced the textiles in collaboration with the Island Waste Collective. It kept some of the original designs. The textiles are dyed in a cold bath with locally foraged loquat leaves.
Interesting.
Yeah, using minimum amounts of power and rainwater, and all the plant matter was later composted. So it just shows you what's gone into these garments.
You can kind of see those the inspiration of the plants and the nature in the design of the dress. You've got this ruffle on the shoulder that almost looks like a big rose.
It does.
As well. And
let's go over.
I quite find the raincoat one quite interesting.
Okay, let's go. Let's have a look at this multicoloured raincoat, which is actually made out of sailcloth. Style.
It is very 70s with the the bright greens and purples and blues and the pops of red as well.
It's made use of 2 old racing spinnakers that had reached the end of their viable life. It's crafted from 95% locally sourced sailcloth waste. Oh, and designed to offer protection from Wellington's famously unpredictable weather.
You can kind of see the sails in the final product as well. It has that kind of balloon-like look.
Anne-Marie Kirkwood and Jill Brogan-Lees work for Hawes and Frere.
Can I ask you both what you think of these outfits?
They're very innovative.
Very innovative.
Very wearable. And it's good to see all the different uses of different textiles, from the Apparel Master one over there, which is bedding and bags and all sorts of things, to the knitted, shredded T-shirt one over there. That's insulation materials from buildings.
Are you in the industry, in the fashion industry?
Yes. No, we work for a company called Hawes and Frere Limited. It's a 100-year-old company that supplies the apparel industry materials and raw materials and trimming and buttons, like buttons and zips and so forth.
Fabrics
as well, bridal as
components,
well.
componentry, bridal fabric.
So what would be your interest here then?
Our company sponsors and our
part of Mindful
director
Fashion.
is a director of Mindful Fashion as well. So very much involved with helping students come through to the next phase where it may be. This is a really good step between fashion and costume and movie, and it's like a link between all of them because there's no jobs in the fashion industry at the moment, and they're very limited when they do come up. So it gives them another option to go in another direction, which is always helpful because people don't know where else they can go when they graduate.
Branch out into different streams.
That must give them hope because, the fashion industry is struggling.
Very much so.
Definitely.
More so than
Slowly
last year.
starting to see a bit of light, though, at the end of the tunnel, I think.
And so this is obviously a small movement now, but really important to, securing the future of fashion?
For this year alone, in the fashion part of it, Fashion Week was cancelled. So that's usually the highlight or the place that they would go. This, with the different recycling purposes, gives them another outlet. So it's great to see it, and I hope we get a good turnout to see what people can offer graduating. I don't know, some of them are graduates, some of them are actual designers that have come back to New Zealand. So there is no outlet apart from this year, unfortunately.
And I think the government has to step in and help because once a lot of these jobs are gone, cutters and CMTs...
Mindful Fashion is trying to push
That'll be it.
apprenticeships for sewing, machinists. We have apprenticeships for automotive, woodwork, electricians, anything to do with building a house that's sort of masculine. There's nothing for, say, feminine, even though women can do any of those, but if you want to be a machinist, there's no apprenticeship currently that will help you get through to the next step. So part of that is this as well, and Mindful Fashion's push to get the graduates somewhere to go.
So how did you hear about this event?
I saw it on Instagram because I study at Wycliffe. I study fashion at Wycliffe.
So what do you think about the whole sustainable fashion kind of area?
It needs to be introduced and more normalised within the fashion community. So we need to encourage it more for upcoming fashion designers.
And for other people who, buy from Team U and stuff like that, what would your kind of advice be to start?
Just do your research. That's probably the best step that you can take. Although it's cheaper and you're like, well, I want it now and it's affordable. Do your research and behind the scenes of what goes on in that, and then hopefully your mind changes.
I have an answer for that last question.
Go for it.
The first step to getting to, sustainability, op shopping. Honestly, going from shopping from Glassons and Cotton On and shit, it's just way, way better, and it's gotten me totally stingy, so I do not buy anything new at all.
I'm Sharon, I'm from The Detail, and I'm making a podcast, but you're the designer,
I am the designer. My name's Selma.
Selma.
Ibrahim Jeriwo.
Okay.
Yeah, full name.
Tell me about your outfit.
Oh, okay. My garment is menswear, so I love to design menswear, and I'm currently doing my master's at AUT, because my bachelor's was of fashion design. So now I'm looking into the interdisciplinary practice of fashion and spatial. So with the garment, the details, there's a lot of laser cuttings because I do a lot of 3D additives at uni. And so I think the key idea is that longevity aspect and making it so creating a timeless look that can be reworn and it's washable.
You're a finalist in the Rising
yes.
Talent Awards. So
21.
We'll be keeping an eye on you.
Yes.
But am I allowed to touch it?
Of course, go touch it.
Okay. So what's it made of?
That is a nylon. So it's excess fabric from a film industry. So they had some nylon left over from one of the movies that they were filming. And the inside lining to the scarf is a jersey knit from offcuts from Zambezi.
And then what did you do with it?
I always pattern make, so I do it out of calico because it can be broken down. So when I made the pattern, I put it onto a software for it to get laser cut. And so with using the software, I was able to lessen the meterage used because I can manipulate how the pattern's laid out, like the lay plan of it.
Are you going to get a job in the industry?
I don't know. I'm kind of waiting till after my master's because I do want to do exhibitions on my work. And I do, in the long-term run, I do want to have my own brand or my own business where I make kind of like a slow fashion, like I just make one-offs or just at a low quantity.
How realistic is that, though? You know, are you going to make money from that? Are you going to live off that?
Honestly, probably not. That's something future me will know the answer to.
So can fashion businesses be mindful and continue to make money? Here's top designer Juliet Hogan, chair of Mindful Fashion.
We're making really good decisions where we're able to. It's a journey. We're never going to get it perfect, but as we have committed to ensure that we're constantly learning and evolving our processes so that what we are producing is done so in the best way possible to take care of our planet, our people, and the industry, really.
It must be difficult to even make the transition to something like this.
Absolutely, and I think at a commercial level, but what the beauty of these sort of events are is it enables people to understand how possible it is. We try and stop as much of our textile waste going into landfill. We're constantly understanding how we can be using that textile waste. We make bloomers for children. We're aligned, Juliet Hogan's aligned with CPAG, which is Child Poverty Action Group. So we're making bloomers out of our waste, and all revenue from the sale of those go to CPAG. So we're being really mindful of, A, first of all, not having a huge amount of waste in the first place, but B, if we do have waste, where that can go, and ensuring that it doesn't end up in landfill.
What would your goal be? You know, for survival and...
Oh, look, that's a big question.
I know.
Like for the industry, my goal at the moment is to get the government to pay attention to us and give us the recognition that we need as an industry, and to be able to say we are willing to help you understand how we can make better decisions as a government and as a country to ensure that textile waste does not end up in landfill.
Is that the only thing you're talking to the government about? Because,
no, we're talking to the
industry...
government. We're trying to talk to the government. It's very challenging at the moment to be able to be engaged with the government, but we are trying to talk to them about a number of things. The skills shortage that we've got at the moment, circular design, textile waste, promoting our industry internationally. Our industry is at a critical turning point at the moment, and unless we all start working together, it's going to be a pretty dire space for us going forward.
What sort of response are you getting from the government?
It's challenging. It's really challenging. We're meeting with Minister Bailey in a couple of weeks, which is great. We've been trying to do that for the last 6 months. There are barriers that come up that make it very hard for us to engage. We are reaching out, but we're not necessarily being received.
Why though? Because you're an important industry.
We are
we're an
incredibly important industry, and I think you'll find that with the launch of our report this year, the Threads of Tomorrow, we have been able to say that we do contribute a huge amount, both economically and culturally, to New Zealand. So I'm not sure why people aren't responding to the meeting request that we have. It is devastating, especially because the majority of people that we employ are women, and we're reaching out specifically to talk to those that look after Ministry of Women Affairs, and we're hitting roadblocks there, and it's really devastating that people aren't willing to even open the door and have an initial conversation with us.
Because what if you don't get the support from the government? What if you don't get what you're looking for?
Well, I think it's a real travesty for this whole nation in terms of we won't be solving the problems that need to be solved. I think, as I said earlier, this industry is at critical turning point at the moment. We can't fix it by ourselves. We don't want to fix it by ourselves. We need legislation and policy put in place so that we can ensure that all businesses that contribute to this industry are taking responsibility for what needs to happen.
What kind of legislation are you talking about?
We would love to see a product stewardship scheme come in so that businesses are contributing financially for every garment that is sold in New Zealand. There's a lot of international imports at the moment of a lower price, which generally, if something is of a lower price point, then it hasn't been made with the best business practice in mind. And it is flooding our nation like it's flooding everywhere in the world. They're generally not made with great quality, so they don't last. And I think that the best thing we can do as consumers is ensure that we're buying product that can last in our wardrobes for a minimum of 11 wears. I think the average wear per garment at the moment is about 3 or 4, and it's just devastating.
Dame Teresa Gatting's Gatting Foundation is a partner in the Circular Design Awards and helped finance the prize pool.
This stole I'm wearing tonight is my ex-mother-in-law's mother, which I got repurposed 20 years ago, relined. So I've always had a passion for vintage, bringing back things that were beautiful, and I collect embroidery. At a personal level, I've always wanted to honour the creativity of the women who went before us, and I see this as really an extension of my work with Angela, supporting women in all different facets, whether it's entrepreneurs or arts. Fashion is a way that women express themselves.
There's a very serious message here, though, isn't there, which I've been hearing from somebody from around the room. And in fact, one fashion designer I talked to tonight said the fashion industry is a bit like the fairy tune of the environment, really, and that it is very close to extinction. What do you think needs to happen for things to turn around?
I don't know really, because I'm not deeply in the industry. So I know what you're saying though, it's like a little canary in the coal mine. I don't want to be despondent about it, and These awards have been amazing for seeing the quality and what I said about making it cool again. It's cool to repurpose. It's not. You can remember the days when second-hand stores smelled awful, and it was all very for people who didn't have much money, and that's really not the way to think about how do we preserve the environment, stop all the amount of trash and waste of textiles, and some of the creativity applied to that we've seen in the last couple of years is amazing. And as some of the judges said, it's changed the conversation among young people in the industry.
Juliette Hogan, obviously, she's trying to get a meeting with the government ministers.
Yeah.
This is an important industry. Isn't that reasonable?
No, I don't think that is reasonable. And you always have to ask yourself, if it's a bloke, do they diminish it because this industry is full of women? So I would think that whoever was the minister of what political stripe should look at the contribution to the economy and go, why wouldn't I take a meeting?
Untouched World exports to more than 50 countries and hit headlines when US President Bill Clinton shopped there during a visit to New Zealand. Founder Perry Drysdale's been doing circular fashion for decades.
So for 40 odd years we've been mending our customers' garments so that if they get a hole in them, they can keep wearing them. So that's the ideal, is to keep things in use for longer.
Yeah. That kind of does you out of business though, doesn't it?
No, not really. No. I mean, we constantly have people coming into our stores and saying, had this for 20 years, can you fix it?
Has Bill Clinton come back with his jumper or whatever it was?
No, he hasn't come back with it. But they come back for more because they know that they're good quality and they're going to last. And so he's been back several times.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think we just have to get used to the idea that they used to last longer. They need to last longer now, don't they?
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. This episode was engineered by Phil Benj and produced by Alexia Russell. Thanks to everyone at Mindful Fashion, especially Chief Executive Jacinta Fitzgerald, and to my colleague Davina Zimmer. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Mā te wā.